I'm curious, what's your entrepreneur journey? What's your 0 to 1 story?
So I was a teacher early in my career.
What was like the clicking moment for you?
I realized that I just had something to share that was valuable.
What are the biggest misconceptions or myths of becoming an author or publishing the first book?
I think a lot of people feel like they have to have their lives figured out.
What do you think is like a good success roadmap?
Most people don't ever get started.
What is the best way to monetize after a book is done?
Your $15 or $20 book probably will not make you rich.
What would the number one suggestion you would give yourself or somebody who's just getting started?
Believe in yourself sooner. Get started sooner. Don't be afraid.
What's going on? What's going on, everybody who's actually listening to this podcast right now? First of all, guys, welcome back to the Nikhil Zai Show, which is hosted by me, the Nikhil Zai. And guess what's going on today? We're back with another amazing guest. And it's going to be a very special episode because after a gap of doing online and offline podcast variations, I moved to Dubai and whatnot. And here we are restarting our podcast with an amazing guest. So I'm so stoked for this episode because it's going to get us to a lot more momentum because I'll be coming back with another amazing lot more guests in very soon time. So here we are with a special guest who is an author, motivational speaker, and he's the mastermind behind Success Profiles Radio. He is here to inspire many entrepreneurs to become the best version of themselves and discover the power in you and make you an author and help you write your first book. We're going to dive into the journey of none other than Brian K. Wright. Hey, Brian.
Hey, how are you, Nick?
I'm doing great. So stoked to have you, Brian. I mean, it's countless people you have actually helped to become authors and publish their books and spread their message. I'm so stoked for you actually being on to help our entrepreneurs to learn the secrets on how they could actually get their message out. But before we get into the actual juice, I'm curious, what's your entrepreneur journey? What's your 0 to 1 story? We would love to hear that.
So I was a teacher early in my career. So I taught at a college in Nebraska. I taught English composition and business math and public speaking. And those were all required courses. So since everyone had to take those courses, I tried to make it as fun as I possibly could. And I wrote my first book in 2009. It was a student leadership book. And I realized after a while, if I could teach people how to write their term papers in college, I could teach people how to write their books. And so I started as a book coach, a book writing coach, and then ended up in ghostwriting. And this is all while I had started my radio show. So the timeline was I started my radio show in 2012. I started ghostwriting in 2016, and I started my magazine, Ultimate Achievers Magazine, in 2017. And I'm doing all three of those things now.
Wow, that's pretty insane. Now, I'm kind of curious in terms of you, like building the skill set when it comes to writing a book. What was like the clicking moment for you to be like, okay, I have a lot of knowledge and I could keep teaching in the class to actually saying, no, I want to publish a book. And like, I'm asking this question because I believe a lot of people or a lot of entrepreneurs have a message, but they don't have that moment for them to realize that, okay, I got to publish a book. In my situation, I interviewed 100 millionaires. I became one of them. And I was like, whoa, like this information is valuable. I want to publish this as a book. And I actually did. And I'm so stoked that, we have book, we have hundreds of copies sold, and we have thousands of people getting online access to that book and whatnot. And it's just so inspiring to see people coming back and praising about the book and the learning lessons from the podcast. I'm curious, what was your clicking moment for you to make that transition overall?
Well, I love to read. And so I was reading a lot of personal development books, and I realized that I just had something to share that was valuable. Like my first book was a student leadership book, like I'd mentioned, and I just wanted to share some of the lessons that I learned from some of the great leaders that I had been exposed to or had read about or interviewed. At that time, I hadn't been doing my radio show yet, but I just realized that I had something that I could share based on my experiences. And so I just started sharing some of those things, and I validated that with research about what my topics, my chapters ought to be. And I just put out my first book. Now, I realized that the first thing I do is not necessarily going to be my greatest hit. It was good enough. I would probably do it differently today if I was starting over. Based on what I know now. But you just have to get out there. Don't be a perfectionist. Don't pretend that this has to be absolutely perfect, because the first time you try anything, it's probably not going to be 100% what you end up wanting it to be retrospectively. But just get it out there. Just get in business terms, a minimum viable product. Get something out there that people can get value from. And if you want to revise later or do it better next time, you sure can. I just get better and better as I do it. And even the first book that I worked on for somebody, I would do some things differently today if I was working with that client again. But I'm a lot better now at what I do than I was when I started. And I think all of us can say that. We don't come out
Yeah.
of the gate being great writers, being great leaders, being great marketers, being great teachers. These are things that we have to learn. And you have to be willing to maybe not be so good at something in the beginning so that you can become really good at it later.
I love that. I think that's so well said, actually, because I could relate. When I was publishing my first book, I was like so perfectionist. It took almost me like 2 years plus to take that from idea to publishing, because I was like hiring the best ghostwriter, revising the book multiple times, and trying to be
Mhm.
perfectionist with the headline, with the book, and all of that stuff. Then I kind of said like, okay, let me just get this out. And I right now look at the net positive. Okay, if you do it first, might not be the best version. We would always give a revised version of the updated book, and everybody would be more happy. So if you could talk about a little bit about like the biggest myths of becoming an author, what would that be? Because I was kind of scared to put that tag to my name in the first place because of the insecurities. What are the biggest misconceptions or myths of becoming an author or publishing the first book?
I think a lot of people feel like they have to have their lives figured out before they write a book. Well, let me tell you, none of us have it all figured out. Even the people you look up to the most don't have everything figured out. None of us are perfect. In fact, I think a lot of people relate to the journey because we're willing to own the mistakes we've made along the way, because your readers probably are making some of the same mistakes that you did, or some of the things that you shared that you went through, you might prevent someone from going through because they read about it from you first. So don't be afraid to be authentic. In fact, I did a
Mm,
book after my dad passed called The Greatest Lessons I Learned from My Dad. Now, were a couple different ways I could do that. I could look at it and then I had a great dad. Not everyone was fortunate enough to have a great dad. Some people writing a book like that might be, I'm going to turn all the things that I didn't like about my dad to become a better dad. But I loved my dad and he was a fantastic dad. So when I wrote those lessons, I took it from the perspective of I'm the idiot that had to learn something because I screwed up. And so that's that's the gist of what my book was about. And I
mm.
also let other people contribute chapters to share their experiences too. So it was a collaborative book and it was really great. The synergy behind having a bunch of people working on the same book was really powerful. And it also is a great way to expand your audience because not only do you have access to your audience, but you have access to everybody else's audience who are participating in that book with you.
Sure. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. Now, if there's an entrepreneur who's listening to this podcast and he's kind of worried or kind of getting anxious on like, he's want the dream outcome, which is, publishing the first book or becoming that author and sharing the message, but she's kind of anxious about the roadmap on like, okay, should I go and get, a publisher first, or should I go and pay somebody to write the book, or like, should I just open a Google Doc and start filling? What do you think is like a good success roadmap for someone to take that idea into an actual execution, like a published book?
Yeah.
What is your personal roadmap for it?
Yeah. If you're a good writer and you have the wherewithal to do it and you have the time to do it, then by all means, it's okay to write your own book. A lot of people do that. Most people don't ever get started. So that's the thing I would say first is get started. Commit to doing some writing every day for even if it's just for 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. You write a page or two because once you get started, you'll have the momentum and you'll just keep going. Once you start any habit, if you just continue doing that thing, it's easier to keep doing it. So just get started. I think that's the biggest roadblock that a lot of people do face. Now, in terms of should I do it myself or should I hire someone? It just really depends. Are you a good writer? Do you have time? Do you have a message? If all those things are true, then go ahead and do it. But make sure that you actually commit to doing it and get started. I've talked to a lot of well intentioned people who say, I'm going to write the book myself. And then I'll ask them 2 years later how it's going. I'm not very far. Should have hired me. But if you have the wherewithal to do it yourself, then do it. Otherwise, it's probably a good idea to consult with someone like myself who can help you get going and make you get started, or just hand it off to someone like me as a ghostwriter and I'll do it for you. Time's going to pass whether you do your book or not. So just do your book.
Yeah, for sure. Like I remember myself, I was in the same paradigm of like, should I do it? Should I start writing and all of that stuff? Then I decided like, okay, like writing is not my best muscle. I could use my time in my business rather like outsource it. And then I found somebody who actually has published their book and got a paid consulting from them and got a roadmap. And then I hired a few ghostwriters and, revised my book multiple times. I was still a perfectionist, but at least because I've committed to it, I was able to get it out. Otherwise, it would still be an idea for the stage. So I'm glad I actually did.
Mhm.
Interesting. And I'm kind of curious, Brian, like a lot of people talk about publishing a book. And now there is millions of books published already, and there is hundreds of tons of new books coming into the market every day, every night, like as we talk. I'm kind of curious, what is the best way to monetize after a book is done? Because obviously you want to get your message out. That's probably the main intention. But there needs to be a strategy around to get that message out because there is a cost to it, right? So what kind of post book launch strategies do you recommend your clients so that they could actually achieve the outcome as an author for themselves, as a business owner, for a fact?
Yeah. Yeah. You can spin your book into various streams of income. Your $15 or $20 book probably will not make you rich. It's what you do with the
Mm,
book after it's done. You can leverage the content in your book to create a course. You can leverage that content in your book to do your keynote. So people may potentially pay you to be on stage. And even if they aren't
interesting.
paying you to be on stage, perhaps the event planner will let you sell your book from stage so that people
Mm,
can buy copies from you in the back of the room. Or even better yet, that event planner may agree to buy a copy of the book for everybody in their audience at a discounted rate. That way, everyone can have one and you can sign all their books. People love signing books that are signed, or they love buying books that are signed by the author. But there are a lot of different ways that you can spin that knowledge into something that will pay you a lot more than selling one book. I believe in selling
mm.
one to many as opposed to one to one as often as possible.
Fair enough. Now, in terms of the marketing of book, what do you think is like the best channel? Is it like going to existing event owners and actually talking to them about your book, or is it posting on social media? Where do you see is like probably the best channel for a new book author to actually get their message out?
Yeah. I think it's a really great idea if you have a list of people that you could ask to support your launch, potentially by buying one or more copies. And that's the thing. People usually ask someone, will you buy my book? Ask them to buy more than one to give to their family and friends. You might consider
Mm,
asking people to buy a box of books for their employees or their staff if they own their own company or if they're a sales manager, depending on what the topic of your book is, of course. But ask people
mm,
to buy multiple copies, even an entire box, and give them a discount. If they're buying 20 or 30 copies of your book at a time, give them a discount. They don't want to pay $600 for a box of books if you're charging $20 a piece. Let them have the box for maybe 400 or 350 or something. You'll move more books that way. And those are books that you don't have to sell anywhere else now. They're gone and you've got a new customer. And chances are, and I've got people in my life who every time I do a book, they will offer to buy a book. The whole idea is that you want to create super fans in your customer
mm.
base. You want people who will buy everything you're doing. And so do it right, be good, be on time, exceed expectations, and you'll have a fan for life.
Interesting. I mean, that's really like the nutshell of building a big business. I believe having raving fans, who are buying anything you put out. Like if you see trillion-dollar companies like Apple and Amazon, they have one of the largest loyal base of customers. Now, I'm curious, what differentiates a book which actually gets raving fans versus a book which is just built to call yourself an author? And I think this differentiation is very important because now we see a lot of people creating books just to call themselves as an author, and there's not really so much value in the book. So where do you see like a upcoming author could actually take from this, interview and be like, okay, these are the actionable things which I need to do to make my book actually exceptionally good, like make it a legit piece of content which could be in the centuries and consumed and respected overall.
Yeah. The first question I always ask someone who wants to talk to me, first question I ask them when we're on the phone or on the call is, why do you want to write a book?
Mm,
That's really important. And who do you see your audience as? When I talk to entrepreneurs, and that's who I usually work with, they usually have more than one idea in their head because they have all sorts of ideas about what they want to do and they're confused as to how to organize it. And I'll sometimes tell them, it sounds like you have more than one book idea in your head. And they'll say, my gosh, you're right. So let's pick which of these ideas we want to work with. And if they still can't decide, I'll ask them, what audience do you want to speak to first? Do you want to speak to a general audience or do you want to speak to a business audience about promoting your business? I want to talk
mm,
to a general audience first. Great. Then we'll do this book first and we'll do that book next after we're done.
mm. Interesting.
So it's very, very
And that's kind
important
of
to
the
know
game plan.
why you're writing the
Hmm.
book. If you're doing it just to tell your story, that's fine. Your friends and your family will buy the book, but why would everyone else want to buy your book? It needs to be compelling enough to where people would want to buy your book. Now, if you're an entrepreneur and you are trying to drive leads into your business through your book, then that's a much easier question to ask because now you can gear your book without making it a sales letter. I mean, I hate reading books like that are
Hmm.
basically long form sales letters because I feel like you're just pitching and pitching and pitching me all the way through. But if you're writing a book that provides tremendous value, but I know that it's going to lead somewhere at the end, then that's great. Maybe your goal is to get me on your email list. Maybe your goal is to let me visit your website. Maybe your goal is to get me to come to your event. Maybe it's to buy something else, or maybe it's to buy all the other books that you've already done that I didn't already know about. But your
Hmm.
book needs to have a call to action at the end.
Interesting.
So
Definitely.
steer your audience towards something that will keep them in your universe when they're done reading your book.
Yeah, I think that's a good, valuable lesson to keep them in the loop because otherwise, you're just another piece of content they consume and they might forget it if you're not keeping them in the loop, which is a very interesting thing to definitely take care of. In terms of the I would say the kind of so in terms of the tools probably you might need to actually use to convert your idea into a book. How would that look like? What are your best tools or project management systems you use to take someone's idea into an actual published book where it's actually selling and creating the impact you would want as a book
Yeah.
writer?
Yeah. Very few people sit at their keyboards and type. What I find is I will repurpose content that I've already created sometimes. Maybe it's a Facebook Live. Maybe it's an episode of my radio show. Maybe it's a series of interviews that I've already done. I'll get those
Mm,
transcribed. And if I don't already have that content, I'll just make a quick outline and I'll just talk into a recorded line and get it transcribed. And then I have something in front of me to organize later. You can talk a lot faster than you type. And so
that's true.
if you're going to do that, make sure you have an organizational structure first. Otherwise, you're just going to be spitting out ideas and it doesn't have any structure to it. I had someone recently ask me to take a look at a book. It was basically about 300 words or 300 pages of stuff that had no structure. And I said, was this just typing out a bunch of ideas straight out of your head? I mean, you're not going to have a great book unless you have a structure to guide it. That would be analogous to dropping a bunch of file folders on the floor and hope they land in alphabetical order. It won't happen.
Wow, that's really funny to actually know. And I think Brian, tips, or I would say using other people's content directly or indirectly is definitely a smart way to write because you could only have or bring so much value to the table, especially when you don't have a lot to bring or you want to make your business book way more valuable. It's great to have co-authors or other people, just like what you have done for the book you're writing about your dad. So I'm kind of curious, what's like the best I would say pathway for you to look for co-authors. I think it's great. Like if you already are getting an experienced author to write with you, that's going to definitely bring in more market and open bigger opportunities and create more opportunities. So I'm kind of curious, what do you think is a game plan for somebody to pick a co-author or how they should actually approach to doing something like that in the first place?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I have a couple of platforms already in place. I have a Facebook group called Authorpreneur Live. You're free to join. You can join it for free and say that you saw us on this show. And I'd be glad to accept you and have you a part of the community, Authorpreneur Live. And another platform would be the magazine that I have. I have people who contribute articles to my magazine every month, and I can
Hmm,
see how well they write. And so I'll ask those people. So there's two really great sources for an audience for me. So that gives me two built-in sources of people that I can ask if they like to contribute to a collaborative book. So
hmm,
build an audience, build a platform, have a Facebook group. And if you build your group and you post content every single day and engage and respond to every comment or question, you're building your audience, you're building your trust. That way, if you do that for a while and then make this type of an offer, you will have a greater chance of people saying yes and raising their hand and
hmm,
saying, tell me more
sure.
about it. In fact, when I did this Greatest Lessons I Learned from My Dad book, when I got to 100 people in my group, I made that offer. 28 of them raised their hand and said, I want to be in this. Yeah,
Wow.
pretty amazing. The group has over 1,000 people now. So I've made money on
Isn't
my
that great?
Facebook group. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. Wow. I believe that's really a long-term play on how you need to build connections first and be human first approach to actually make it happen. Brian, I'm kind of curious. You have done over 560 podcast episodes on your podcast, Success Profiles Radio. I'm curious how being a podcaster helps in becoming an author, and how do you correlate between these overall?
Yeah. Several of my books, actually, three of my books have been curated from interviews from my book or interviews from my radio show. So one of them is called Success Profiles, Sales and Mental Toughness. That has 3 chapters in it, plus the intro and the epilogue. And then 2 of them are called Success Profiles, Conversations with High Achievers, Volume 1 and 2. And those
Hmm.
contain more interviews from my show. And so I picked the best ones. I edit them. I
Hmm.
edit every single one because you can't just transcribe it and throw it together and say, here's my book, because it's going to be sloppy. And you have to figure out what order you want to put them in and make sure there's some kind of a structure and a rhyme or a reason, or just to put it together in a way that people will be able to consume it easily. And
Hmm.
so that's what I've done. And so I just repurpose content.
Love that. Now, I could see you have had some amazing guests on your podcast, and you have 5-star rating almost on the entire podcast. You have over 200 people rating it, and
Uh-huh.
I believe this is one of the best entrepreneur podcasts in the space. I'm curious, what's like your, I would say, approach to getting great guests? I could see former CMO of Chick-fil-A is in here, and amazing people who have raised capital is in here. I'm curious, what's the approach for you to actually attract these guests? How do you consistently book yourselves to equip knowledge and keep these conversations with high profile individuals who actually
Yeah.
have value to share on your show?
Right. Well, I've been doing it long enough now that PR agencies will pitch me their guests. And I would say probably 90% of the people on my show are pitched to me that I did not
Wow.
know. And I don't answer every pitch I get. I probably get pitched a dozen times a week at least. And I've learned not to book too far in advance. One time I booked 4 months out in advance,
Mm,
and people eventually forgot that they had booked me, and then they made other plans. And so that left me needing a guest 2 days from now, which
mm,
was what I wanted to avoid in the first place. So I only book
mm,
maybe 6 or 8 weeks out at the latest now, because I want people to remember that they're supposed to be on my show. Creating a calendar invite certainly does help. But when I'm
mm,
working with a PR agency, there's usually someone that brought me to it. And so I will, several days beforehand, I will say, just confirming so and so's appearance on my show this Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And they'll usually say, yep, got it. And that helps a lot. But it wasn't always like that. It took about a year and a half for me to have people start pitching me. And
mm,
so I search within my own network first. I would go to events. I would network on Facebook with people, and whoever I found that I thought might be a great fit, I had on my show. And even then I had people who were referred to me by other people. Some of the guests turned out great. Some of them, maybe the show was a little more challenging to get through. I had
mm.
one guest one time. I got toward the end, had run out of questions. I still had 3 or 4 minutes left. And I said, so all great leaders are readers. And so what have you been reading? And she said, oh, I don't read. What? That's like the worst thing you can say to an author is I don't read. So I learned then that I need to have more questions than I actually need. And so you learn
Mm.
from some of the things that happened, how you should proceed going forward. But yeah, in the beginning, just about everyone came from my own network somehow.
Pretty cool. So if somebody is looking to start a podcast show, they should absolutely squeeze the network. I think that's kind of what I've done. I was in the ClickFunnels realm more, and I actually got a lot of two comma club winners, who got these $1 million awards to be on my show, and that kind of gave me a community of like a small community of 1,500 people who have these awards, and I made it exclusive for them. So that was like a status symbol for them to show up as well. Like, okay, this guy only interviews like $1 million business owner. So I think it's good for me to jump on as well. So it kind of translates a lot. So that's pretty cool. You actually shared that. Now, before we get into a few other questions, I'm kind of curious. How does a book actually help? What opportunities does a book open up? What did it do? It did to your life overall. And I'm kind of curious on how it would actually change the customer's trust when you are an author overall in the sales cycle.
It's a great question. I think for me, because I used the radio show to do books and then to build my magazine and then to build ghostwriting, All of those
Hmm.
platforms, all those offerings work in synergy. And so when people see all of the stuff that's going on in my business, that attracts more opportunities. I will say
Hmm.
that I've had a chance to do red carpet interviews at 2 movie premieres because I had my show and because the producer of those 2 movies loved my interviewing style and he knew he could trust me to interview the amazing people that were going to be walking the red carpet on both of those occasions. And so you attract opportunities by continuing to create consistently and being really
Hmm.
good at it. Have something insightful to say. And again, have your outline, have your structure first. Don't just talk and hope that you say something brilliant, but have something in your head that you want to talk about, your maybe 2 or 3 things that you want to say, and have your little outline sitting on a Post-it note right there, and then just go.
Love that. Love that, Brian. Let's get into kind of questions we typically ask most of our guests, which is what kind of daily routine you're actually practicing right now, Brian? Having a business, podcast show, helping other people publish their book, and running, your own business, and also giving talks like this could be a lot sometimes. I'm curious on how does your routine look like?
Well, early in my day, I like listening to Audible because I like feeding my mind with things that will help me as a person or help me in my business or motivate me or generate new ideas. I've gotten so many ideas listening to books on Audible and it really fires me up and it really gets me ready for my day. But
Hmm.
I think the other thing too is the question I put out, to God every day is, I look forward to whatever blessings you have in store for me today. And so I'm in a mood to prepare to receive whatever's in store for me and to do so gratefully. I think gratitude's huge. I talk about this a lot on my show. I ask everybody, just about everybody, the importance of gratitude in their journey. And I always get great responses and they all say it's important.
Hmm.
So those are the 2 things that I do. And I try to walk every day for an hour. And sometimes that's just pacing back and forth in my room while I'm on the phone with somebody. At least I'm getting in my steps, even if I can't always
Hmm.
go outside.
Makes sense. That's really insightful. Now, Brian, if you could go back and talk to 20-year-old yourself, the Brian who's excited for the future, he's just getting started. What would the number one suggestion you would give yourself or somebody who's just getting started?
Believe in yourself sooner, get started sooner. Don't be afraid. That's it. Believe in
That's
yourself,
pretty,
get started. You are more amazing than you're giving yourself credit for. So just go.
yeah, I believe too many people have that, am I good enough kind of feeling before they kind of really push the button. And I believe we kind of need somebody to remind us that, okay, it's all good. You could push the button. Brian, if you could look back about, what you've achieved, what do you believe are like your life's biggest achievements and what's your next biggest goals?
Greatest achievement so far. That's so hard to pinpoint. I did an exercise one time with a really great friend of mine where we each came up with our 100 greatest successes in our life so far. And we did 2 Facebook Lives totaling an hour and a half about that. And so it was really a lot of fun to come up with that many things that we can truly say that we've accomplished in life. I would say
Hmm.
the thing that I'm probably most proud of is that is such a hard question. Getting to do what I love to do on my terms.
Oh, that's deep.
Yeah. I've had a JOB before and I did it for a long time. And after a while, I just realized I can't play by other people's rules anymore, especially when the rules are
Hmm.
stupid. That's why you're an entrepreneur.
You're here to bend and make your own way out overall. That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
I know as entrepreneurs, Brian, we might not consider our mistakes as mistakes because we continue to learn from them. But if you could point to that one, like, oh, I could have avoided that big lump, what
Mhm.
would that be? What's like the biggest mistake you would like to help other people avoid?
Well, I choose to view my mistakes as learning experiences because without them, I wouldn't be who I am right now. But I would say be very careful about who you trust. Not everyone who says they have your best interests at heart really do. So
Mm,
vet very carefully who you trust. I have learned
interesting.
as I've progressed in my journey to keep my circle pretty small. I don't announce my moves in advance. I don't announce my moves until they're done. So I think just be very, very careful about who you can trust. And I think the people you can trust are the people that you know are not going to share with anybody else, or they are people who you know can actually help you get to where you need to go. Because some
Mm,
stuff is just on a need to know basis. Can they help you or can they not? The people who are just simply curious don't always need to know.
That's so true. Yeah, we all have been there. Somebody taking
Hmm.
advantage of us for sure. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. Brian, what's your main inspiration for success? And who are the key people involved in your journey?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What's your main inspiration for success? What excites you to get up and help other people publish books? And who are the key people involved in your journey to achieve the level of success you have?
Knowing that there are still people out there who need what I have to offer the world. I think that's really, really important. Just having a purpose, having a mission, knowing that there are still people out there that I can impact. If I woke up today, it's because somebody needs me.
Wow, that's deep.
Yeah.
Love that. Ryan, what are the top 5 books you recommend to most entrepreneurs which have helped you to become the best version of yourself?
The top five. Well, I think Jack Canfield's The Success Principles, how to get from where you are to where you want to be, really impacted my journey in 2005 when that book came out. And there is now a 10th anniversary edition that came out in 2015. And that's when I interviewed Jack Canfield on my show.
Wow, pretty cool.
Yeah, he was really, really amazing. I love that book. The Aladdin Factor by Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield also is very impactful because it teaches you about the power of asking for what you want. And a lot of people
Mm,
go about it wrong. They don't ask people who are actually capable or willing to help. You're asking all the wrong people to help you. If that person does not have the ability to actually help you, then you need to find out who can actually help you before you ask. So that's two. I listened to a book on Audible recently called Big Money Energy by Ryan Serhant. And it's really about the ability of, well, 3 words: big money energy, going big, knowing where your cash is going to come from, and having the energy to execute your plan. That's all super, super important. And gosh, there have been so many other books. Born Rich, You Were Born Rich by Bob Proctor, I think really teaches us that our riches are inside us and that you actually
mm,
are enough to do what you need to do. You just need to actually believe it first.
mm.
And so, well, that's 4. Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, was huge. You just think about money in a completely different way that way. And other book that I'll add that Robert Kiyosaki did was Retire Young, Retire Rich. Really, really
I
fantastic
love
book.
that.
And you just learn to view opportunities differently. You think differently. He doesn't always tell you what to do, but he tells you how to think. And that's really,
And
really important.
that's a great stack right there. And I need to just mention that Rich Dad Poor Dad was a book which I was kind of frustrated in my home. I was kind of getting bored and I started reading this on my phone. And after finishing halfway through, I paused for a moment. I continuously read it, I guess, without even stopping. Then my whole view on the world just changed. I was like feeling like, oh my God, I didn't know this was a completely different world than what I'm assuming. Like the reality is completely different. Financial education is something which I was never introduced to before. Nobody talks about money. It's kind of a taboo to talk about money in family in India or even in school. Nobody discuss about that. Doing business is more of a gamble than anything. And once I saw that, I was like, whoa, like there is a different world out there to really live the life you want, and you got to be financially educated. And once I saw that, I just was on my self education journey, where I interview other people, where I pay for mentorships, where I join courses, learn from other people's mistakes to save my time. And that's how I believe it contributed a lot to my success, and I'm glad you are name dropping great books. Thank you,
Hmm.
Brian.
You're
Brian, if
welcome.
somebody's watching this and if they want some help with you to actually publish their first book, how could they find you? What's the best place for them to go and contact you?
They can go to callwithbrian.com and get on my calendar.
Simple as that. Straightforward. Appreciate that, Brian. And any last words before we conclude the whole show?
If you have been thinking about writing a book, get started. Time will pass, whether you do it or not. So just get started. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. I wish I had published my book so early than I actually did. And I could completely relate and vouch for what you just mentioned because it doesn't need to be perfect, guys. When you're writing your book, you could just, share what you want to and package it the right way. And people will appreciate that as long as there's value in it. And Brian, thank you so much for spending your time here and really giving us this opportunity to pick your brain on how somebody could go from just thinking about writing a book to actually having it done and publishing it. Overall, appreciate you sharing information. And guys, hope you enjoyed this podcast so far. And if you need any help in actually writing a book and getting a book published, you could definitely hit up Ryan and join the community. and mention our community name so that we could actually help you out. And hope you guys enjoyed this podcast so far. I'll be coming back with another amazing guest, just like Brian. We'll see you on the next episode of the Nikhil Zai Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye bye.